17 years. No warning. No thanks. No handshakes. Just a young man with an MBA and a clipboard, telling me I was too expensive to keep around. And all I said was, I understand. I still remember the exact moment the email landed. Subject: performance review meeting, 10 a.m., conference room 4B. Sender: Catherine Lin, HR business partner. CC: Jason Bellamy, CEO. BCC: well, that's the part I'd never see. 10 said sharp. No warning. No agenda. Just a cold clinical message like I was some underperforming junior associate. But after 17 years in the same company, you stop needing calendars to read the weather. Something was off. I walked through the corridors like a man headed to his own funeral. Not because I was afraid, but because I could smell it, the careful whispers, the sudden silences when I walked by. The same intern who usually greeted me with "Morning, Mr. Reeves" couldn't even look me in the eye. I'd been through 3 acquisitions, 5 rounds of layoffs, 2 rebrands, and 4 CEOs. I'd seen this play before, and this time I was the one being written out. The door clicked shut behind me. Jason didn't even bother pretending to smile. He gestured at the chair across from him like he was doing me a favor. Next to him sat Catherine from HR, her hands folded neatly on a faux leather folder labeled "Exit Packet." Behind them, the tall windows looked out over the skyline, the same view I'd admired when I first got promoted to Director of Operations 12 years ago. Jason cleared his throat. Then he said the words, "We appreciate everything you've done, Marcus, but after reviewing our quarterly targets and forecasting our burn rate, it's become clear that we need to restructure. We're moving in a more agile direction, one that, unfortunately, doesn't include your current role." Catherine added something about severance and dignity and ongoing support. I didn't hear it, because in my mind, I was back in 2006. Back when this company was 5 people in a WeWork, and I was the guy wiring the servers myself while pitching clients in the same afternoon. They didn't fire a manager that day. They discarded a foundation, and I understood that, deeply. So I nodded, just once. I understand. Then I stood, adjusted my tie, walked out. No arguments, no speeches, no second chances. Because I didn't need to convince them. I'd already outgrown them. They just didn't know it yet. Back at my office, people avoided eye contact like I had some contagious disease. Even my assistant, someone I'd mentored for 3 years, only whispered, "I'm sorry," before disappearing. I packed slowly. A mug from my daughter. A photo of my late father and me at my first promotion ceremony. A stack of notebooks I never let out of my sight. That was the important one. They thought they were firing a man, but they were releasing an idea. It's strange what you remember on days like that. Not the speeches, not the meetings. You remember the smell of the printer toner, the slight flicker in the fluorescent lights, the way the hallway echoed differently when you walked out for the last time. You remember silence. Because silence, that's where transformation begins. Let me take you back. 17 years ago, I walked into this company with nothing but a second-hand laptop and a borrowed suit. I was 31 then, newly married, hungry, grateful. My first task? Reorganize the warehouse inventory system. I stayed up 3 nights straight, building a custom app in Python just to shave 6 seconds off every order fulfillment. 6 seconds. Multiplied by 2,000 shipments per month. Tens of thousands saved in my first month. I didn't ask for recognition. I just asked for more work. Over time, I became the guy they called when no one else had answers. Billing errors? I fixed the back-end logic. HR miscommunication? I built a dashboard to track employee sentiment through metadata. CEO having a meltdown over churn rates? I created the first predictive model for customer attrition, before data science was even a department. But I never made noise. I never bragged, because I believed in building, not broadcasting. I grew the same way trees grow. Slow, rooted, silent. But beneath the surface, something vast was taking shape. And by the time Jason Bellamy, the founder's son, showed up with his crisp haircut and corporate buzzwords, I had already started growing my own forest. They called me too expensive. They said I was part of the legacy model. But what they didn't realize was I'd spent the last 6 years building something of my own. On weekends, after midnight, in between flights and meetings. No social media announcements. No angel investor selfies. No buzz. Just code, research, strategy. A vision so sharp, It cut through doubt like a blade. I never intended to use it. Not really. It was just my escape. A sandbox where I could build the systems I wanted to build. No politics. No cost-cutting. No interference. Just function. Elegance. Purpose. But now I had nothing but time. The first evening after I was fired, I drove home in silence. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't call anyone. My wife Lara met me at the door, her eyes wide, unsure. "What happened?" she asked. I smiled, kissed her on the cheek, set my box down, and said the same thing I'd said at the office. "I understand." That night, I opened my old notebook. Page 1. Problem. Modern logistics systems are reactive, not predictive. Opportunity. Use deep learning to create an anticipatory logistics engine, something that acts before the supply chain breaks. That note was 5 years old. And every page after it? Designs, diagrams, meeting transcripts, patent drafts, customer interviews, failure analysis from our own systems. I hadn't been journaling. I'd been building. They thought I was just another middle-aged man with a pension and a shelf of awards. But I was something else entirely. A founder in hibernation. And now I was awake. I called it EchoFrame, not because it sounded cool, but because that's what it was. A framework that echoed everything I'd learned in 17 years. Every mistake, every workaround, every solution no one bothered to write down, I had. And now I was going to use it. Not for revenge, not for validation, but because the world needed better systems, and I was done waiting for permission to build them. That night, I bought the domain, filed the LLC paperwork, registered the first draft of the codebase, encrypted the prototype server. By midnight, I wasn't just unemployed. I was a CEO, a quiet one, but not for long. That night, I didn't make a plan. I opened a notebook, not a laptop, not a spreadsheet, just ink and the thoughts I'd carried in silence for years. Inside were scribbles no one else ever asked about, diagrams they called overcomplicated, questions they never let me finish. But every page held the same answer. Build it yourself. For years I had written down what didn't work. Not because I was bitter, because I was observing broken logistics flows, inefficient routing algorithms, departments that competed instead of cooperating. Every flaw I tried to fix and every solution they ignored, I documented all of it. Not out of spite, out of precision. They thought I was loyal. I was actually taking notes. I didn't build EchoFrame as revenge. I built it as a correction, not of people, of decisions, of how companies chase trends instead of truths, of how they listen to consultants instead of experience, of how they value noise over knowledge. What they dismissed as expensive was discipline. What they called legacy was infrastructure. And what they thought I left behind that day
was just my chair.
Not my value, not my mind, and definitely not my plans. By midnight, I had pulled out 3 full notebooks. Not ideas, evidence, pain points I'd seen repeated for a decade across clients, departments, markets, missed opportunities, flawed models, and the one phrase I'd circled over and over: if we did this properly, we'd never break down again. So I stopped waiting for permission to do it properly. EchoFrame would not be a pitch deck. It would not beg for venture money. It would not ask for approval. It would work, silently, consistently, relentlessly. A logistics intelligence engine that adapted in real time, that learned, that prevented chaos instead of reacting to it. They thought they'd removed a cog. What they'd really done was release a lever. Because while they were optimizing yesterday's spreadsheets, I had been building tomorrow's architecture. They fired me on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, EchoFrame had a legal entity, a secure cloud stack, and a clear roadmap. No celebration, no launch party. Just forward. I wasn't looking to destroy what they built. It was already crumbling. All I had to do was replace it, piece by piece, silently, elegantly, permanently. 2 weeks later, I made the first move. Not a launch, not a press release. Just a quiet email to an old contact. I built something. No promises, but it solves the problem you mentioned in Houston. Want to test it? No logo, no demo video, just a link and trust. He replied 4 hours later with a single word. Finally, we'd met years ago, a regional ops director at a freight network constantly on the edge of collapse. Back then, I had floated ideas in casual conversation. He said they'd never go for it. I said, maybe one day. Now it was that day. He connected EchoFrame to a small subset of his routing data. No real risk, just enough to test. I watched from my laptop as it lit up. The system came alive like it had been waiting for this. In 11 hours, it identified 3 blind spots in their supply chain. In 24 hours, it had rerouted their next 2 shipments through weather-safe corridors. No one in their ops team had even realized the storm was coming. He called me personally. You built this from scratch. Yes. Why didn't you show this to your old company? I did. They didn't listen. That's how it started. Not with funding. Not with press. With one solved problem, and then another, and then another. I didn't need marketing. I had performance. Words spread through Slack groups. Private LinkedIn messages. Late-night conversations between burned-out logistics managers saying, "There's this guy. He built something that just works." I watched it grow from the background. No ads. No noise. Just silence and results. And the more I stayed quiet, the louder the impact became. Then one morning, I got a call. A voice I hadn't heard in years. "We've heard about EchoFrame. Can you come in for a meeting?" It was from a company that had once turned me down flat. Back when I was pitching ideas inside someone else's office. Now, they were calling me. I paused. Smiled. Let me check my schedule. It wasn't about ego. It was about momentum. The engine was moving now. Not because I pushed, but because I removed everything that slowed it down. In the background, my old company remained oblivious. Still posting photos from conferences. Still talking about agility while using spreadsheets from 5 years ago. Still letting interns patch problems they couldn't define. They hadn't noticed the current changing beneath their feet. But they would soon. It was strange, stepping into that building again. Same marble floors, same receptionist, same scent, a mix of industrial cleaner and overpriced espresso. But I wasn't here for a badge this time. I wasn't here to report to anyone. I was here because they had no choice. The client was a manufacturing firm. Their systems were buckling under last-minute shipment chaos, and their current vendor, my old company, couldn't fix it. I wasn't replacing them yet, but the cracks were showing, and I had what they needed. They booked the meeting at Neutral Ground, a co-working space downtown. Funny, they used to reject remote solutions. Now they couldn't even keep the lights on without outsourcing. I arrived early. Brought no slides, no branded folder, just my laptop and a short, sharp live demo. I sat quietly as they filed in. Executives, logistics leads, even someone from finance. And then, he walked in. Jason Bellamy, the CEO who fired me. He froze when he saw me. Just for a second. Then smiled that rehearsed, fragile smile. "Marcus, didn't know you'd be presenting today." I smiled back. Neither did I. Just solving problems where they appear. He sat in the back. Didn't speak. Didn't take notes. But his eyes? They never left the screen. I walked them through a live analysis of their current logistics system, showed how EchoFrame predicted stockouts 6 days in advance, how it rerouted around known bottlenecks, how it learned from failure faster than any manual override ever could. No buzzwords, just results. And in 3 minutes the room changed. Chairs shifted forward, arms uncrossed. People stopped checking their phones. They weren't watching a pitch. They were watching relief. When I finished, silence. Then someone, the COO, leaned in and asked, "Why haven't we heard of this before?" I looked him in the eye. Because it wasn't built to be heard. It was built to be used. Afterwards, Jason approached me in the hallway. "Still in the game, huh?"
Looks like it.
"You could have pitched this to us before you left." I tried, for years. A pause. "Let me know if you ever want to talk about collaboration." I nodded politely. "Sure." But we both knew. That door had closed the moment they shut mine. I walked out into the cold air. No applause, no fanfare. Just something far better. The feeling of returning, not as a memory, but as a mirror. One they couldn't look away from. The first sign came quietly. A LinkedIn post, short, unassuming. Finally seeing real predictive accuracy in our logistics stack. Huge thanks to EchoFrame. Just one sentence. No tags. No hype. But it spread like wildfire in the right circles. 2 days later, my inbox doubled. 5 days later, I had more demo requests than I could handle. And somewhere in the background, they noticed. The first message came from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year, a senior analyst still working at my old company. Not sure what you're doing, but leadership is freaking out. They lost a key client, now there's a task force. Name keeps coming up, EchoFrame. I didn't reply. Didn't need to, because this wasn't about confrontation. It was about presence. From the outside, everything looked fine. Quarterly reports still polished. Team photos still cheerful. Jason still doing panel talks on adaptive leadership. But behind the curtain, whispers, missing deals, sudden cancellations, former clients no longer returning calls. They were losing grip, and they didn't know where to pull. They sent someone to call me. Not Jason. Not HR. A third-party intermediary. Polite, vague, transactional. Would you consider licensing EchoFrame as a white-label solution? I paused. Why now? A pause back. We've been watching your growth. We think there's opportunity for synergy. Synergy. That word again. I smiled. EchoFrame wasn't built to blend in. It was built to replace. I hung up. I wasn't gloating. I was focused. This was no longer about one company or one firing. It was about a system that had outlived its usefulness, and the quiet rise of something better. More clients came, one by one. By recommendation, not by outreach. I never advertised, never pushed. I just solved problems. And the industry responded. Somewhere in their boardroom, I imagine they ran the numbers. How did we lose 6 clients in a quarter? Who the hell is behind EchoFrame? Wait, wasn't he? Too late. They'd let the architect walk out the door. And now the building was cracking. The best part? I wasn't trying to take them down. I wasn't even watching them. I was too busy building the thing they said was impossible. It started with a name on a projector. Not mine, not officially, but a slide in a closed-door strategy meeting, buried in the churn analysis. EchoFrame, emerging competitor, non-traditional go-to market, undisclosed leadership. Jason froze. Someone in the room asked, "Anyone know who's behind it?" Silence. Then the head of ops, a veteran, not part of Jason's inner circle, cleared her throat. "I think it's Marcus Reeves." The name hung in the air like a storm cloud. Someone laughed nervously. "Wait, the guy we let go?" Jason didn't laugh. He stared at the screen. Didn't say a word. But that's the moment it happened. The shift. You can fire a person, but you can't erase impact. And now, every problem they couldn't solve had a shadow shaped exactly like me. The meeting ended early. Internal emails started flying. Whispers turned to questions. Why was he let go again? Did anyone check what he was working on before he left? Wasn't he the one who flagged the routing delay issue last year? Jason hated questions he couldn't control. 3 days later, the founder, Jason's father, called for a private review session. He was retired, but still on the board, still powerful enough to summon his son to a quiet lunch. I wasn't there, but I can guess how it went. You let him go without a plan. He was expensive. He was essential. He was silent. We assumed. Exactly, you assumed. They thought silence meant submission, but some people stay quiet because they're already building something louder than words. That same week, I got another email. This one from someone unexpected. Jason's former executive assistant. 2 lines. "They're unraveling. Whatever you're doing, it's working." I didn't reply, but I wrote something down in my notebook. A small note, next to the sketch of their original systems architecture, the one I had designed a decade ago. The weight of forgotten people always comes back, especially when they were the ones holding the beams. They say systems don't collapse overnight. They're wrong. They collapse the moment you remove the person who understood why they stood in the first place. It started small. A delayed shipment, a miscalculated inventory report, an internal tool that began freezing under load. Minor things, fixable things, until they weren't. The structure I had built wasn't flashy. It wasn't perfect, but it was held together by understanding. Shortcuts weren't just avoided. They were flagged, rewritten, documented, quietly. And when you remove the one who built the skeleton, you better know how the bones connect. They didn't. I got word through the usual places. A former colleague texted, "Marcus, the system's eating itself." They had patched over old logic with new tools they barely understood. replaced key databases without migrating safeguards, launched a UI overhaul that broke back-end sync with regional hubs. Nobody knew where the source of truth lived anymore. Clients noticed. Delays turned into disruptions. Disruptions turned into penalties. And then into exits. But I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't watching from the shadows with some smug satisfaction. I was working, because while their house creaked and split at the seams, mine was growing. We'd just signed our 6th client, a mid-tier logistics firm that had spent 2 years trying to build an in-house prediction model. They scrapped it within 2 weeks of onboarding EchoFrame. No arguments. No persuasion. Just results. Meanwhile, back at my old company, Jason was spiraling. I heard he launched an internal audit, hired external consultants, sent out memos filled with urgency, with capital letters and bold red lines. But systems don't respond to panic. They respond to care. And there was no one left inside who remembered how to care for what we had built. EchoFrame began eating its way through the industry, not with marketing, but with memory, because every pain point I solved was a mistake I'd once lived through. The building looked the same dull grey facade, same rotating glass doors, same faded plaque by the elevator that used to carry my name. But it didn't belong to them anymore. Not the building, not the floor, not even the name. It was now a subsidiary, acquired in a quiet, unpublicized transaction through a holding group they'd never bothered to research. And EchoFrame owned the holding group. I didn't announce it, didn't post a picture from the lobby, didn't tag the location. I just walked in, badge in hand, coffee in the other, as if I'd never left. The receptionist was new. She greeted me politely, didn't know who I was. Didn't need to, because this return wasn't for them. It was for me. I took the elevator to the 5th floor. The doors opened with the same mechanical sigh I remembered. And there it was, my old office. The room where I'd written my first system spec. The whiteboard where I'd sketched out the routing algorithm they now tried to replicate. The window I'd stood beside the day I was told I was too expensive. It was still there. Except now, the key was mine. I opened the door, stepped inside. The furniture was gone. The shelves were bare. But the room remembered me. It always would. I didn't speak.
Didn't sit down.
Just stood there, letting the silence settle. Not as a trophy. As a reminder of how easily people forget the hands that built their foundations. A junior employee walked by holding files, earbuds in. He glanced at me through the open door. "Hey, are you the new guy from the tech division?" I smiled. Something like that. I didn't explain, didn't clarify. Because that's the thing about legacy. If you have to say it, you haven't earned it. Outside the office, the brass nameplate had been removed. Blank wall, empty screws. I didn't replace it. I left it like that. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let the silence tell the story. I never called Jason, never sent an email, never corrected the stories he told about why I left. People like him need noise. They survive on narrative, control, perception, spin. But I had something louder than all of that. Results. While he gave interviews, I signed contracts. While he managed crises, I built systems that didn't need managing. While he chased relevance, I became inevitable. Somewhere along the way, the market shifted. Not because I made it happen, but because I stopped trying to hold it back. The space he once controlled, it evolved without him. Clients stopped asking, "Who built this?" They started asking, "Why aren't we using this already?" Legacy isn't a statue. It's repetition. It's reliability. It's the quiet hum of something that just works. That never asks for praise. That never breaks. That never needs a name to prove its worth. Sometimes, I pass by the old building, lights on late, new faces, new promises, but the foundation is still mine. And they know it. One day, I got a letter from a young engineer working under Jason's new CTO. Short, honest, unexpected. Just wanted to say, "I studied your architecture before I even knew it was yours." It made me want to build better things. No signature, no ask, just respect. That's all I ever wanted. Not revenge, not recognition, just to leave something better behind than what I found. People ask me if I ever regretted not fighting back. Fighting for what? For a desk, a title. I didn't lose anything that day. They did. They lost the chance to evolve, to grow with someone who already saw what was coming. When they let me go, I didn't fall. I rose silently, patiently, deliberately. And now I'm still here. Not in headlines, not in lawsuits, in the systems, in the standards, in the things that work because someone cared enough to build them right. So no, I won't destroy you. I'll outlast you. And eventually, you'll be nothing more than a footnote in the opening chapter of my beginning.